I spend my time in customer operations software and AI, excuse me. I've been in it for about 5 years, specifically in conversational AI and AI and customer operations more broadly for about a decade. So, as much as I love engineering and technology, what I also like about the work that I do at McKinsey is it forces me to take a step back from what's the technology itself to what's the market and the demand and the challenge that it's solving. And that's why I wanted to start here. The numbers you see come from a survey that we run every 2 years and from last year's survey. Despite the decades that we've heard of digital self-serve is going to go up, there's going to be the death of voice, what you see there on the left-hand side. Contact rates keep going up year over year, and demand keeps going up. Meanwhile, more recently, we've seen increased employee attrition and lack of integration across the technology stack. So while your demand's going up, the ability to solve that demand is actually going down and becoming harder than it was previously. So what are we doing about it? In that same survey, over half of the people that we polled, and these are executives at some of our clients, over 200 around the world, said that their budget is going to go towards some form of AI or digital application in the next 2 to 3 years. And you see it across the entire customer funnel. How are we going to enhance self-serve? How are we going to improve access to different channels for our customers? How are we going to AI enable our agents to solve the problems of our customers better? It's not going to be a single place in the stack, it's going to be across the stack. And lastly, on the bottom there, how are we actually going to make our management more effective at solving those problems? I think one of the biggest problems I see with our clients today is that there's this operational gridlock. For so long, the way that we've been improving customer operations has been incredibly manual. How are we randomly sampling calls to then go into a manual review of the process and the way that we're reviewing it, to then manually redesign it and implement it in the knowledge base, RPA, business process management, next best action, all these different technologies out there. So actually one of the things that we're most excited about are some of the tools that are coming to market and the applications within generative AI that are helping reduce some of that gridlock. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But before I get there, I think one of the most important things in these conversations that we have about generative AI isn't to educate, but it's to level set. Because there's a lot happening in the last 6 months to what Jerry was saying. ChatGPT is the lowest common denominator that the masses around the world understand. But in fact, this technology is well proven and has been in existence for much longer. The birth of it is pointed to widely across the industry with the start of a Google paper called Attention is All You Need that came out in 2017. Google then led the way, actually, with the first large language model called BERT. Then OpenAI came along. Now, ChatGPT, if we fast forward a little bit, it was not an AI breakthrough. GPT-3 was the underlying AI algorithm for ChatGPT. Okay, so then what was it? It was a user interface breakthrough. It was the ability to engage with a large language model in the way that the general public could understand and experience and experiment with. So it's really important as we look backwards to understand this is market-proven technology. This isn't something new. What's new is the experience that the mass public is starting to understand and engage with. But then as we look forward, what you see happening right now with GPT-4, Llama, Alpaca, and all these other names, Palm, that I really don't know how they come up with, but they do. Performance is increasing at an exponential rate right now in these large language models. That will not go on forever. So what's happening next? What are some of these highlighted for? You see geographical expansion with Baidu's ErnieBot. You see open sourcing with Stanford's Alpaca and Meta's Llama. And then you see more consolidation around some of the major players like Amazon and Google. What does that point to? In a market that's changing rapidly and it's tough to keep track with, looking ahead, when performance improvements slow down, we're going to be looking at cost efficiencies, open sourcing. How do we make this more available and accessible to everyone? And we're also going to be looking at distribution to the point on accessibility. How are some of the major players creating platforms around these to then distribute it out to the masses and make it available to enterprises? Because right now, it's mostly a consumer product in the way that we see ChatGPT. So then as we look at what is all the excitement coming from? On the right-hand side, I think what you have here is the way that a lot of people understand it. Generative AI, it's in the title, it's the ability to create across a number of different modalities. Large language models with text, images with DALL-E 2 and Stability, coding with GitHub Copilot, and then others you don't see here, audio, video, and the like. Okay, but natural language understanding and processing existed before generative AI. So why is generative AI interesting? And I think it's this here on the left-hand side, the ability to understand. And right at the center of it is that transformer model, which came out of the Google paper. If you think about the first time you might have interacted with ChatGPT, you probably put a question in that you could answer with a Google keyword search, just to kind of test it out, see what happened. Okay, came back with a good answer. But I could have used Google to do that. Would have taken me 30 seconds. What if I give it a question that I would ask Wikipedia and spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes reading Wikipedia, researching to understand? Okay, well, it actually came back with a pretty decent answer. What if I ask it a question that would take me 2 to 3 hours of internet research to understand? I have these ingredients in my refrigerator. Help me plan a healthy meal. I'm looking to get in a 30-minute workout because I'm jet lagged. I'm staying in a hotel with basic dumbbells and some treadmills. What's a good workout I could do? Oh, wow. That's an impressive answer it came back with. So it's that ability to understand that's really capturing the minds of the public right now. Because while the natural language technology existed, the level at which it understands the questions we're asking and how to form a response to it is where the real value is coming from. But we're here to talk about customer experience, not technology. I told you I do like my technology. So, as McKinsey, how do we see this coming together in customer experience? Number one, it's going to touch customers, agents, and management. Management is very important here. To the point I made earlier around that gridlock, some of the technologies that we've been deploying more recently in the last 5 to 10 years, let's say, most of them are technologies for management. So what does that lead to? We used to talk about this in waves, but how quickly we're seeing the space evolve, and then as we think about what it takes to deploy a use case for generative AI. Customer self-service, I'll use the dirty word of bot, virtual agent, a co-pilot for your agents, or even the Insights Hub for your management. We think it's actually going across all of these. First, how do you remove that gridlock of operational debt and start to work through the backlog? You're looking at your productivity boosts. Less agent and management time spent on non-value add technologies and manual tasks. Let's get rid of those first. Now that we've relieved some of that pressure, where can we go from there? Service innovation is maybe one of the most important aspects that we see here. AI itself is different than traditional software. Put the same thing in twice, you could get 2 different things out. It's very hard to train and test that. So what if we took our workforce and we made them part of that? Made them the contributors to the AI, training and testing, give them that little thumbs up, thumbs down. Now they're innovating the service. They're providing that feedback. And as this becomes more standard, what we're seeing is behavioral shifts. We'll see a chart later. But at the end of the day, as people start to realize that they have these tools available to them and the nature of their role is changing, we're seeing that they're more engaged. They want to drive customers and participate in their own work towards something that is more engaging, and they become more AI fluent, and they become promoters of the product themselves. So then, what's the roadmap and the sequence for how we do this? We're seeing some early traction in the use cases you see up here, but it's a little bit more than that. While each one of these has value by themselves independently, the capabilities of generative AI actually run across these. So now we're starting to think a little bit more about, well, ChatGPT is the lowest common denominator, like I said earlier. People will jump to, I want to do a self-serve bot, kind of like ChatGPT. But then they start to think about it. I've heard about these hallucination things. Sometimes it just makes up data. Maybe I don't want to start with customers. Maybe I'll give it to my agents first and let them try it out. But then they start to think like, gosh, all the data we have that we use to train it is pretty bad. We don't want to replicate a wasteful process. We want to empower our agents with a new innovative process. So how is our actual processes designed? And this is where we get into the sequencing standpoint. Starting with continuously improving your knowledge base using both the knowledge base itself, as well as other sources like your contact recordings, your chats, your calls. And tying that to agent performance, you can figure out, where is this working well? How are my best agents doing this? I'm going to extract that trapped knowledge, and I'm going to use content generation to actually start authoring some of these knowledge-based articles. Great. Now that I have that, real-time data, especially on voice, is incredibly difficult to integrate with and respond very rapidly. So I'm going to start to build out use cases there, take in the live data, and then prompt my agents with that optimized knowledge I've designed for them. Now that I've overcome the real-time data hurdle, I'm going to go back to that customer self-serve case. But I'm still worried about some of this. How do I know that I'm ready to go, build the integrations, invest the capital that's required? Because a lot of my systems are actually quite disconnected towards building that self-serve use case. Well, I'm going to ask my experts, the agents themselves. They're going to give that thumbs up, thumbs down. And by providing that feedback, once I cross a confidence threshold, that's when I know I'm going to be ready to deploy to customers and really deliver that self-serve experience. So as we're looking at the roadmap and how you sequence your technology deployment, we see it starting with removing that operating debt and innovating on your processing, empowering your people to be humans in the loop and provide the feedback, and then moving on to actually deploying it to customers. So what's the end result? We looked at this about 2 months ago to figure out how the demands would shift in customer contact rates. June 14th, you're going to see a larger article come out from us on the overall macroeconomic impacts of generative AI. It's part of this research. That one's going to have a lot more. So where we see it today, about 25% of contacts are automated. In the future, we see 50%. Some of the numbers you might have heard, it's actually a lot less than that, surprisingly. Why is that? First of all, the contacts you don't want to automate. Fraud and safety. Fraud, health and safety, very high-touch, sensitive things where you want that human involvement. And that empathy of a bot, just the simple knowledge of knowing you're working with a bot, could have a very adverse effect. Next, the limitations. I made the point, OpenAI and ChatGPT is a consumer product in its current form. I'm not sure about sending my PII, my PHI, off to the cloud. We're in Europe. Different countries have different regulations around data and how it's stored. That's very hard to control if you're just sending it off to an API. These are known issues, but they're still working on it for the enterprise.